So hello everybody. So far I had absolutely no need for stem separation, but I joined a band, a two-piece band called Individual Totem some years ago, and the music is in the direction of EBM, electronic body music. And we made 2 albums since then and want to play live again this year and also play some of the old material from which I don't have any stems or single sounds or anything. We only have the final masters, which are also heavily compressed and gives quite some challenges. I want to play as much as possible live on these gigs, and so I started to look into stem separation to at least get rid of the vocals and also try to get rid of some things I want to play, so the arpeggios, for example, or pads, or these things. Stem separation tools grow like trees currently. And there are tons of them, but I wanted to stay away as far as possible from cloud solutions and also subscriptions. I have no need for subscriptions or similar stuff. So I looked into applications which only run offline, and there's still plenty of them. And namely, I looked into Cubase 15, the latest Apple Logic, Maschine from Native Instruments, the MPC software also got stem separation, RX11 from iZotope, and last but not least, Spectral layers also again from Steinberg. I will first go through all of them, how you do that. So you can also use that as a tutorial, how to do stem separation. But then we will have an intense listen of what's going on in the different outputs, and to give you a first impression what the material is we are dealing with. Here it is. So this is the end of the song, and you notice it's very dense. The drums and bass are not really that separatable, and there are distorted vocals, which also is a challenge to such algorithms. And there are also other challenges. If you listen here in the beginning, there is a kind of voice or vocals pad, and this can be confusing for the algorithm to confuse that with the normal vocals, as we also will see later on. But first, let's do the separation process with all of these tools. So let's start out with the MPC software. This is the latest 3.6 beta. No idea when they make this final. This is already in beta since, I think, since May last year. And it's also, it's really horrible to use. And you need to add basically an audio track. Then you can pull in the sample. And then you need to go into the audio editing area, click on the clip, and then on the right lower pane you see functions, and click again on the sample, and there you can do the stem separations. And as all the tools do, you get these 4 options. You can separate vocals, drums, bass, and everything else. Only a few of these tools give you more options, but most of them go for these 4 different options. So this takes a while, but when it finally finishes, we end up with the additional files here in the browser. So you need to locate this location and then we can copy them over into our test directory. So next one is Maschine. Maschine is a bit similar. You pull in your audio file into one of the 16 slots, and then you go to edit, and in the right lower corner there's, among these confusing buttons, which are lots of them, the last one is to do the stem separations, and you would simply click it. There are no options to set up, and it does its thing. And when it's finished, it shows you the separated tracks. It's the same idea. You get those drums, bass, vocals, and others in 4 slots of a new group, and you need to save the project with samples to find the samples, and we also store that in a separate directory. Next one is Cubase from Steinberg, and there you simply create an audio track, pull in as well your audio clip, and then in the audio menu, you find the option to do stem separation, and there you have some more options. You can select which of the 4 tracks you want to export, and then you say also do your thing, and then you get the 4 resulting tracks. Next one, Spectral layers. Here you pull in your audio file into the project or open the file, and then you have many more options in that software, because that's a dedicated software for doing repair works and such things. And here you have additional options to, for example, only extract the voice or specifically drums, or separate only voices, improve or separate dialogue and such things. So that's a software which gives you more of such options if you do stem separations regularly and have different application needs for each of them. So finally, you select the option to split a song, and then you get some more options for that. So here you see it's a pro software, and you get a bit more options. You have now here the possibility to say you also want to separate guitar or piano. But since we don't have such instruments in the mix, we can just leave them out. And then you can say, do your thing. So after the separation process has finished, you need to export the different layers. So Ebenen is a German word here. So you need to select all of the layers which were created to export them. You can also change here the resolution you'd like to have for the format, and then you end up also with these 4 different files. So next one, RX from iZotope, another pro software which is similar to Spectral layers. Also lots of repair options in that software, and a stem separator is in there as well, but it's actually called rebalancing. So the first idea they had is that you can turn down the vocals or turn them up, or turn down the drums and such things, but it can also separate these 4 tracks. As we saw in the others, you have a little setting of sensitivity. I did not think of that. I simply set it to best and say, yeah, do your thing. And that's the option button here, stem separation. And when it's done, it's a bit tedious because it opens different panes for each of the audio tracks, and you need to store each of them separately. So that's a little bit of a drawback in the workflow. And here you can also set the resolution which you prefer to have for that file. You can also add some dithering if you choose a lower resolution, and then you finally end up with your file. So last but not least, Logic. Apple Logic Pro also has a stem separator. Here you also get this option to separate for guitar or piano or others, which means here if you deactivate them, you will lose some audio. So the correct setting to do is, this is also noticeable if you select the preset to do such things. You will see that it deselects the 3 lower ones. The other one is the last one. And then you get the enablement of the submix. So it puts now the 3 last tracks, which it identifies into a separate file. And we also finally end up with these 4 different tracks: drums, bass, vocals, and all the rest. So, but finally, let's give that a listen. And I showed you already the master track, which is the original master track. And the first test I did is, how does the sum actually sound? So does it still sound the same as a full mix when I play those 4 tracks, or are we missing things? And the good news is I cannot really hear a big difference between them. So let's go through them. So there might be slight differences, but to be honest, I could not really notice a difference between the some signals. So we need to dive in the separate tracks. And as I already said, first let's check about the vocals. Are there issues in this beginning part? And if we take a look here, this is clean. Oh, something I don't know why that happens, but Cubase somehow didn't do it for the full length. Maybe I set accidentally a range or something, but I don't think so. So there might be an issue here, but I guess that can be fixed by doing it again. So nevertheless, let's dive in. Here the vocals are pretty clean, but there is one misrecognition here in the beginning in Cubase. So there's a short part where it gets louder, which gets misidentified as the vocal. And we have this issue also in others. Where is... So it looks good here, looks good here, looks good here. I think we had Spectral layers also has this little misidentification here in the beginning, which it identifies as vocals. But that's not really a big problem. But let's hear how the vocals sound separately. So Cubase. Quite okay, but with some noise. So Logic. Very good. Maschine. Not good at all. MPC. Also quite some artifacts. RX11. And Spectral layers. Very good. Nearly no artifacts. Very nice. How do the drums sound? That's also pretty critical because I definitely want to keep the drums. So let's have a listen to Cubase. Misses quite some high end, I think. No cymbals. A bit better. Very bad. Even worse. That sounds pretty good. You also get the cymbal crashes and spectral layers. Also very good, and you hear also nicely cymbals. And last but not least, the really tough thing I notice is the bass, and because it's really hard to separate from the bass drum and this tense low end which happens in the song. And let's have a listen to the bass. So, Cubase. So what you hear, I think the bass is a kind of analog synth with the RX11 preset maybe over it for the accentuation of the bass, because it mainly plays one note as much as I heard so far. So that's really tricky to get this right. And Cubase is not bad at that. Let's have Logic. Logic is also pretty interesting, but I think it gets a lot of other sounds in from other instruments playing. Let's go Maschine. Yeah, this is Maschine is really unusable, I think, already. And MPC. Also not that good. RX11. You get here some other things in it. So it picks up other things, which is confusing as bass. But nevertheless, the bass signal is quite okay and usable. And finally, spectral layers. And this is clearly the best. I think it gives you a clear tone. But it misses this DX7 vibe, which I'm not sure if it's actually really there. But let's compare Cubase again. Which I'm also not sure if it's really coming from the bass. But nevertheless, I think the most usable signal is the spectral layers one. Oh, here we have the DX7 vibe a bit more. Okay. So, and last but not least, let's do others. Let's start with Cubase. Okay. Logic. There's some parts of the vocals in there. And also a bit of drum feeling. Maschine. There is a sequencer in there, so quite nice. MPC. Oh, that's actually pretty good. RX11. Spectral layers. Let's maybe do some final test where I mute the vocals on all tracks. And let's start out with Cubase. So if you only want to get rid of the vocals, I think they all do a quite okayish job with maybe don't use Maschine or MPC, but the rest does a pretty good job at that. Maybe let's do one final one to only listen to drums and bass. And again, let's start with Cubase. Yeah. Logic sounds cleaner. So I really don't like the cymbals on that one. Lots of artifacts with MPC. This is nice and clean. This is very clean, but somehow the bass is pretty low. So here's lots of bass, but here we miss the bass a bit. Because it's that clean bass signal I showed you in the beginning. That one, which misses a bit of a top end. So what do we have in the end? Let's have a look at all the tools. First, maybe one thing I would say is the processing time as well. I chose quality, I chose best, so that's why Spectral layers here took 20 or nearly 21 minutes for this song, and iZotope took 6 minutes 24. Logic's pretty fast, and yeah, let's talk about quality in a second. And Cubase was really fast, unbelievably fast, but we had an error with that as well, if you remember, so only in 39 seconds. MPC was also quite long for the bad quality. 7 minutes 15, and Native Instruments Maschine 4.5 minutes. And also we need to have a look at the price. So these are both surely the premium gold standards here, and bit expensive, and this is music software you might own anyway. So if you have them anyway, you can give them a shot. And yeah, Maschine is very cheap, but also I think it's the worst one in this setup. Yeah, you already saw the ranks here. So I think first two are RX11 and Spectral layers. They could be both one. I think they have strengths. If we listen to these different tracks, they have strengths in different areas. And surprisingly, Logic gives you some really pretty good results and is also quite fast. The second fastest here in the setup, and I think that definitely does the job. Cubase is very fast, quite okay results still. And what I do not want to use is clearly the MPC and the Maschine 3. I think the results are really too bad, and there are better options than that. What I did not test is Ableton Live, which introduced also stem separations in version 12. I'm still at 11. I do not really use the software, but what I heard online, I think it's somehow in a range of the Cubase quality at that regard. And yeah, if you have experience with that, tell me down in the comments. And what do you use? What do you prefer? Do you need stem separation at all? Also tell me down in the comments. And until next time, make some cookies.